and welcome to another episode of Can I Come Over? Hello, everybody. Welcome once again. My name is Renata, and I'm going to be your only host for today. So, as you might have already been able to tell, it's been a few episodes now since we've picked up on the video essay format that we're calling it. And this is my second time around. I feel a little bit more comfortable. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. We'll see where it takes us. But of course, before we get into today's episode, let's get into this week's obsession. My weekly obsession is writing. I am somebody that is not a huge reader. I love books. When I really get into a book, I really, really get into a book. But writing is something that I pick up more frequently and a little bit more easily. Had a bit of a love-hate relationship with it, but especially with journaling and all that stuff, although I don't do it every day, it's something that I quite enjoy. And as of late, and I've kind of made it a goal for my summer to write as much as possible, to practice my writing, to just have fun with it. Because when you're doing something and you kind of get rid of all the rules, it's so much easier to be more creative with it and to have more freedom and to just have fun, to just have fun with it. Let's get straight into this week's episode. We're going to talk about the understudy of the female body. This is a topic that, as of I think probably the last 2 years, I have become very passionate about. And there's a lot of things about, I guess, like growing up and just being a woman that you slowly start to realize, oh, a lot of the world is just not made for me and for me to fit into it. And it doesn't just stem from now. It's not like a modern issue. This has been going on for centuries. And in the olden days, so to say, women were frequently like labeled as maniac or insane when it might have just been either period symptoms or sharing any form of general distress or wanting to express their emotions because they were not being composed and serene and tame and all that sort of stuff. They were immediately labeled as like manic. And this would either be one of two outcomes: either women would be sent out into a mental asylum or they would get prescribed opioids, which are a very addicting drug that it was used a lot more frequently and in a lot higher dosages back in the day. That's kind of like the historical basis of it. Now, let's get into some articles because this is what we love to do here. The first article, I found out about this and I decided to do this topic because a couple days ago I saw on TikTok about this one girl related to this article, and I was like, huh, this is really interesting. And so I went in and I did like some of my research, and I came across this one article published by three publishers: Mia Venkrat, Sarah Handel, and Mary Louise Kelly, published on NPR, titled "The First Female Car Oh my god, the first female crash test dummy has only now arrived." For those of you who don't know, cars, when they go through a testing process, they need to put in a dummy. Like, literally, like, not a stupid person, but like a dummy of a person. And usually, the way that this is done, specifically for like the male test dummy, it's measured and it's created with a lot of with the average male in mind: height, weight, muscle mass, kind of weight distribution, center of gravity, um all these things, all these very like scientific detailed things are taken into consideration. There's a bunch of sensors that are put into the test dummy, and then that is placed inside of a car so that when they run tests for crashes, for swerving, for anything of the sort, there's not an actual person inside of the vehicle, but the data that you collect from it would replicate that of your average person that would be driving the vehicle. So this helps with establishing regulations, with measuring how good a vehicle would be to go out later into the public and into the market. It's a very crucial and extremely important process of kind of, getting the car out and getting this like product, which is a machine, a really big, powerful machine, out into the public and to be easily distributed. Up until 2022, the crash test dummies that were being used for women were not women. They were just scaled down male dummies. Like it was that of, from what I read on the article, it was equivalent of that of a 12-year-old male. When I read this, I was so frustrated. I was like, there's no way. Testing has been carried out since the 70s, so over 40 years now. And in this 40-year span of time, we have never used a female dummy. There's no wonder why women are more prone, generally, like biologically, women are more prone to whiplash injury. And this has been known from the late 60s, something that was established in the article. And it's so incredibly shocking and so disappointing to know that, for the longest time, these vehicles that are being advertised to men, women, for people, they're just for people, regardless, for people to use, are not taking into consideration more than half of the population who are driving these things. Women are generally more prone to injury because they are shorter. Statistically speaking, women are much shorter than men, and so they more frequently have to sit closer to the actual wheel of the car, and in order to sometimes even reach the pedals, and higher in order to see above the trunk of the car. Because of that, you're closer to the actual front and you're closer to the area where the airbag comes out and it hits you directly. And you are more prone to suffering so many more injuries and so many more things because these vehicles just simply do not have women in mind. And there's a lot of different things that this one leading engineer for the whole project, called Astrid Linden, a Swedish engineer, if I'm not wrong, um, she talks about how it's the differences are just beyond height and weight. You have mass, you have strength of tendons, and the muscle, like the areas within your muscle groups that are stronger or weaker or so on. There's a lot of things that you have to keep in mind, and a lot of areas in women that are more sensitive or that are stronger or etc., that you have to keep a track of if you want to create a dummy that is anatomically accurate and that caters to, again, half of the people who are using these things. And it's a crucial step because without testing, which is something that the authors of the article point out, without testing, you cannot then be able to assess the vehicles and then implement regulations and then based off of that, make changes to these products that will then cater and be safe for women to use. So, reading this, I'm like, I'm not surprised. Now, when it comes to women's health, right, this is not just one of the very rare occasions where we see something where women are just completely disregarded or just kind of overlooked. There's a second article that I came across from, again, just looking at women's health specifically, that says women's health is chronically understudied, but these engineers are changing forward. Now, this is an article published on The Brink, which is one of the like news platforms from Boston University that's specifically focused on engineering. And the writer Jessica Colarosi, she talks about these two engineers who are Catherine Kleiperik and Wong, both biomed engineer professors at Boston University. And the research that they're carrying out is extremely important because of the fact that they're focusing on uterine fibroids, which are a type of medical condition that affects specifically women and that has to do with the whole uterine area and sometimes even like reproductive area, depending on the case, so on. And the article itself states how over 80% of women will develop uterine fibroids at some point during their life. That is almost not inevitable, it's just so common. And the fact that this itself, regardless of how common it is, over 80% of women is extremely, once again, extremely, extremely, extremely understudied. And it further goes on to state how basically any tissue of the female reproductive system is understudied. This is a quote directly from Claybrick, one of the biomed engineers. And I'm not surprised. I'm going to be very honest with you. I I'm seeing all these articles, right? And there's just a general pattern that you see all throughout when it comes to women's health and just women consideration into all of these fields where there is general underfunding that goes into it. There's therefore a lack of understudying that comes out of it because no one's getting the money to do any of the research. And then there's a general lack of knowledge. And as a result, there are a lack of solutions and a general lack of available medicines or systems or changes to legislation that will then prevent these common cases to go on and on and on and on and on. And it's very upsetting to see it. Again, not surprising. But I was even talking to my friends about it. I'm like, I compare my female and my male friendships, and almost every single woman that I know has some sort of like struggles on a weekly or on a monthly basis with some sort of chronic pain, with some sort of chronic health condition. And when I talk to most of the time to my guy friends, except for probably like one or two people, they're like, "Oh no, like I'm cool. Like this is not an issue. This is not that. This is not that." You see conditions like Hashimoto, which is a predominantly women condition that has to do with your hormones and your immune regulation and so on and so on. They're completely understudied, and there's just a huge general lack of any sort of treatment or help or long-term solution because of the fact that it just simply predominantly affects women. If it was the other way around, I kid you not, it would there would be so many more solutions, or there would be so much more research that would be poured into these sort of things. And it's not just this one condition, it's so many more things, just as, uterine fibroids and general women's reproductive health. When it comes to issues like the pill and birth control, there has been advancement when it comes to male catered forms of similar contraceptive pills, of like birth control and birth control pills for men. But we still see how this process is a lot more, I don't want to say regulated, but there has been it's taken so long because the issues that have come up and the side effects that have come out of it are taken, almost it feels as if they're taken a lot more seriously compared to birth control for women. I have seen the side of like all the side effects for a women's birth control pill. That thing is ginormous, let alone the fact that it's ginormous. Some of the side effects there are like vomiting blood, bleeding, death. I'm reading them like why? But I think these two examples and these two articles are really good when it comes to highlighting how important, genuinely important and necessary it is for us to start taking women's health a lot more seriously when it comes to diagnosis, when it comes to actual solutions, when it comes to research and funding. It is crucial in order for us to be able to better assess the severity of these issues, the impact of these issues, and come up with solutions that a lot of the times are not that costly. Or again, of course, when it comes to like implementing and legislation and regulations for cars and vehicles and getting companies to change maybe certain safety aspects or redesign their vehicles. I'm not saying that that's not going to be, you know, that's not going to be expensive. Of course it will be. There are going to be some cases that are going to be a lot more costly compared to others. And I think another thing about this is the fact that as a woman, you don't really learn how big the issue is up until it's almost like too late. I don't want to say necessarily too late, but you're just old enough and you're realizing, this is going to be the rest of my life with any other issue that comes up, with health issues, with systematic stuff of vehicles, the health regulations, so on. Women are just not considered. So, this is, I guess, this wraps up for me my video essay. And there's a lot more that all these areas impact. There are going to be so many more other things that we currently don't know of that will eventually come up, just as it was the new female dummy, and there's still a really long way to go. So we're making progress, slow but steady, but it's so important for people to be aware that this is an issue, and for people to want to change this issue and to want to make the world also cater to women as much as it caters to men, which, again, long way to go. But I hope that from today you guys learned a little something new. This is very different to the previous video essay that I did, which was a lot more introspective and a lot more reflective. I think regardless of how different it is, it's so important for these topics to be talked about, and that's why we are sharing with you guys. Please let us know what your thoughts are, what, if there's something that you know of or another very interesting article with something that is related to this topic. We would love to hear all about it, so please link it down in below. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you for joining us and thank you for seeing our beautiful faces. And if you're joining us on Spotify, thank you again for listening and come knocking at our door whenever you want. Bye!